morning, everybody. Yes, it's time to speak again of EPUB. EPUB is an existing standard. It's living. We are using it in the industry for years now, and there are millions of EPUB on the market for the best experience possible for readers and also even to blind people, as we will see. But EPUB was still a bit in a bad situation these last years, and we have done a lot of work with W3C on it. To remind you, EPUB was published in EPUB2 in 2006 with IDPF. So the structure, the international structure taking care of EPUB was IDPF, International Digital Publishing Forum. And in that area, we worked on this standard. EPUB2 was published in 2006. It was a bit some minimal standard for black and white books, we would say. And in 2011, there was a work on EPUB3. EPUB3 was designed not only to be for black and white books, but for all kinds of books. And also, the one thing that is important at the moment is that the DAISY consortium went in the loop and built also the specification of EPUB 3.0 with IDPF. That means it already at that time brought to the EPUB standard the accessibility potentiality. And then we knew that the open web standards was very important. It's the base of the content documents, of course, HTML and CSS. But we knew that with the coming of HTML5, there was something that we need to open and to innovate in EPUB. It was the fact that we should think about a browser-friendly format. And this brought the idea to bring a new release of EPUB that was prepared in IDPF. It was 3.1. But 3.1 was too much disruptive, too innovative. It was, at that moment, thought of the innovation we need today, and we are working today in the W3C, in the publishing working group. But at that moment, in IDPF, it was too soon. And in EPUB 3.1 was never adopted. Also because the EPUBCheck, the tool that verifies the conformance, was not modified to check EPUB 3.1. So in fact, the biggest event was the fact that IDPF wanted to join the W3C because we thought that in W3C was the innovation on the open web platform that was very important for EPUB. And it was a very good idea to work there, to understand there what's happening, and to contribute to merge the ideas of publishing and the ideas of innovation in the web. So in 2017, IDPF was a department, we could say, of the W3C, which is now publishing at W3C. And we will see how it's organized. But publishing at W3C started in 2017. And there was a community group there that takes care about EPUB. And this community group started to revise EPUB to bring to the industry something that is reliable, interoperable, and compatible with what we have in EPUB 3.0. This is EPUB 3.2. In fact, it was a step from EPUB 3.0 to EPUB 3.2. So we will see that in detail. How it's working in today in the publishing activity in W3C, there are several groups. There is some kind of organizational group, which is a publishing business group, which gather input from the industry about the needs on business, and also give some priorities to the other groups. These other groups, the very important one I spoke already was about the maintenance of EPUB 3. We will see what is the achievement. But there is also a very important group for the future standard. The future standard for ebooks in the web will be elaborated by the publishing working group. And we have the chance here to have the co-chairs of this working group, Wendy, who is speaking about that tomorrow. So I will not detail this publishing working group. You will have detail from Wendy tomorrow. But I will detail that what we did with the digital publishing, the EPUB3 maintenance group, community group, and the publishing business group. And hopefully we continue here to build the community with this kind of event like here. And we also will have an event in Japan, in the TPAC, in September for the publishing business group. So why a new release of EPUB3? So I explained already that EPUB 3.1 was not compatible with EPUB 3.0 and was not accepted. So there was a motivation in this EPUB3 community group in W3C to build a strong compatibility for a new release of EPUB, so that the industry may rely with serenity on this standard. So the group examined what was done in EPUB 3.1, took the best from it, did a very good job on the specification, so that it can be easily grabbed by developers, and also evaluate what was already done in HTML and CSS. And so the idea of this new release is to be fully open to the new standards of the web for the content, meaning HTML, CSS, SVG. And there were some issues that were in EPUB3 that have been solved around EPUB type. So the idea is all EPUB 3.0 files are EPUB 3.2 files, and vice versa. So what was the change in the spec? The main and the most important change is that there is no more any restriction on the use of the open web standards HTML, CSS, and SVG. All your content you produce in EPUB 3.0, meaning in EPUB 3.2, your contents are full web content. There is no restrictions. It means that this part of the spec is already ready for the future. We added some new core media type about fonts, particularly, and the specifications were cleaned up. We insisted, as we did in 3.1, to deprecate some specific functions that are really not really used or implemented in reading system. And very important, we added, with the help of the DESI consortium, we added accessibility in EPUB with specifications that are now very clear. And as the industry used EPUB type for different usage, for not only taking the structural semantic vocabulary in EPUB type, there was no restriction of the use of EPUB type because it's an editorial meaning to bring some semantics to the EPUB, so it's open now. So today, by specification, EPUB3, by this specification, EPUB 3.2 is the best EPUB we ever had. It's universal. It's for all kinds of books. And it allows publishers to produce one file for all. It's conformance. There is a spec, and we will see an EPUBCheck for that. So we can be very precise on how it's built. It's easy for developers to build a reading system. It's interoperable. It's distributable everywhere. It can go on every platform, every reading system, every vendor. And even in the old e-readers, it can be also read because it's HTML. And most important, it's really accessible. We can build with EPUB3 born accessible ebooks that are available for blind people, visually impaired people, the day the book is published. So it's a very, very important thing for the visually impaired community so that they are at the end of the book famine. Obviously, we are not in a brave new world. There are some issues still. I think these issues don't come from the specifications themselves. They are from implementations. Some publishers of specific publications don't use EPUB. They need something else, and that's why also we are working in the publishing working group in the W3C for future standards. Some kind of EPUB files like fixed layout are not quite interesting, because if they display a full page perfectly, like the PDF, like the print, they are not easy to read on small screens, and also they are not accessible. Conformity also may be an issue, because we know that in certain parts of the world, some processes have been set up for a huge number of ebooks, but they did not exactly follow the spec. So we are in the middle of an issue where if we do exactly the checking against the specification, all these files are non-conformant. So we need some compromise. That's the industry. It's also, there are some issues also in interoperability. And that's why for reflowable EPUBs, we will still use or allow the presence of the N6 file for all e-readers. And there are also some reading systems that are not exactly implementing everything of the spec. And that's a very interesting job for the EPUB3 community group to continue to test, to propose evolutions, to gather a use case from the community, to explain to developers how or why there is still an issue in certain reading systems. Even in accessibility, we have difficulties. It's not from the spec, obviously, but image description is an issue for publishers, and it's something that has to be set up, started, made aware to the publishers and the authors. And there are large plans in everywhere in the world to start to describe the image when the digital publishing is starting. There are also some issues in transformation, because EPUB, even a born accessible EPUB, is not always sold as it is. For instance, Amazon converted to Kindle, and we know that some issues, some of the accessibility techniques are lost in this conversion. So that's something we are working with Amazon. So it's not a real, completely bright vision, but I would like still to remember you what's the main thing that EPUB3 has brought. It's completely open on web technology, CSS and HTML. It improves reader experience. There is also, with CSS, a large part of typography improvement. Here I saw a capital letter, but there are also text can be put around images, and also MathML. But accessibility is also something very important that is working with EPUB3. And we hope that fixed layout will be unfixed sometime, because we know that these different screen sizes bring an issue to display documents that have complex layout in PDF that are for which designers are using InDesign. But we know also that with new techniques in CSS Grid or CSS Flexbox, we can make it responsive. So this page on the right is somehow complex layout. It's not easy to see it as a reflowable EPUB, but with the CSS3 Grid or Flexbox techniques, this dynamic layout can be done in the browser or in the reading system, and bringing the different blocks in different positions, redesigning the page when the size of the screen is smaller. And this is really working. So to be sure for the industry to be, we have an interoperable and reliable environment with EPUB, we needed EPUBCheck to be completely revised to support this latest specification EPUB 3.2. So the publishing business group started to think about that. And we knew that EPUBCheck was not changed since 2016. And so we launched a RFP to find a developer. And we found DAISY Consortium. We have chosen DAISY Consortium. And also we've launched international fundraising, a collaborative one. So everybody can give what he wants. If you have money, I can grab the money at the end of my presentation. But there is still need for money because we have done a lot of work already with DAISY Consortium, thanks to them. First, the bugs that were listed in the previous version have been fixed. And mainly, EPUBCheck is now validating EPUB 3.2. And there was a very good synchronization between the spec that were at that moment in October last year published as a first draft, the draft report from the community group. And this synchronization between the developing of EPUBCheck to validate EPUB 3.2 and the spec itself helped improve the spec. Because when EPUBCheck needed to verify something, they sometimes found that the spec was not very enough precise. So it has been improved for the spec. And EPUBCheck 4.2 has been published definitively in this May, and it's available for the whole community. There are still some steps, still some needs in developing EPUBCheck about documentation, the test suite, and to allow something we asked to the DAISY Consortium, to allow future developers to be included, not so that because it's open source. So open source needs to be very well documented so that new people can come in the loop. So it's still in progress, and if you have here the link to the fundraising form. I here want to thank already all the companies that have been giving for this work. It's a tremendous commitment. And I also want to thank all these people. I want to thank the EPUB 3.2 group, community group led by Dave Kramer from HPG and Rachel Comerford from Macmillan. They did a tremendous work to coordinate all the stuff that was in question at that moment. I also want to thank Matt Garish, who wrote the specification. And I also want to thank here DAISY Consortium for the work on the EPUBCheck. And it's time now to say goodbye, to say adieu to EPUB2. There is no need to produce EPUB2 files now. It's not the question of having an EPUB 3.1 that is not compatible. It's finished. EPUB2 is a cul-de-sac. Let's come to EPUB 3. Meaning, I don't want to sell you video interactivity. I want to say only that in the realm of EPUB2, what you are able to do in EPUB2, EPUB 3 does it better. Does it better with better structure, with better web technologies. Some countries in the world have adopted EPUB 3 because it was supporting all languages of the world, which is not the case in EPUB 2. So let's stop any EPUB 2 production. In Hachette Livre for France, we have forbidden EPUB 2 last year. So we don't accept any EPUB 2 anymore. And there's always this question of cost. There is no cost to write an EPUB 3 process as we do an EPUB 2. There is no cost. There are some parameters to change, okay, like the number of the version, the header of the HTML files, okay, but that's no cost. Obviously, if you want to add some specific things you find only in EPUB 3, like video interactivity, there may be cost, but if we start from what EPUB 2 is able to do now, there is no cost to produce an EPUB 3. So if you want to contribute to all these efforts, I remind you that Laurent said that you can be a member of EDRLab, of course, but you can also help the community group. It's free. In the community group, there is still a lot of work about testing and improving reading system. In the publishing business group, we have these issues about strategy, priorities, what are the needs of the publishing industry. And here you have Dahay, you will see him today, and me. So if, as co-chairs, so let's have a word if you have questions. I've put a list of useful resources, all the links to the specifications and the different groups, and where you can find the latest version of EPUBCheck. And that's all. Thank you.